Hello, what's up everybody? How is it going? Welcome to brand new tutorial series of PHP Specials. I'm your host Anwar Ali, and through this playlist we'll be exploring on some special topics on PHP which might be new to most of you. So I assume that most of you are familiar with basic PHP syntax and basic PHP rules and like if, else, and loops and array and class and objects. And besides just starting from scratch, we'll be discussing on a single topic for a day or two, and we'll try to cover the topic in the easiest way we can. And to make this playlist run smooth, I would like to have your suggestions on which topic would you like to discuss the next day, so that I can prepare and present it to you in the best way I can. For today, I have planned to share the concept of pagination in PHP, which might be confusing and new to most of you. You must have seen various news page or various e-commerce website where there are lots and lots of products and lots of news and lots of blogs, and you explore through each page through some numbers in the bottom of the page, like there are, like, say, if there are 5 pages in a blog or in a news site, you just click on the numbers to get to that page. So we will try to cover the same thing today, and we will learn how to implement the pagination and what's the concept behind it. So before we start, I'd like to say that I'm using AMP server as Apache and MySQL server. You must be using some other, or you might be using the same. It doesn't matter. You just need to have an Apache server with MySQL running and a working browser. So I've already created a database called PHP Specials with a table called users in it. And if you click on users, I have already added some entries in it, around 14 entries with different names, starting with my name. And I have around 14 names in my table, and I want to show like 5 names in each page, so that we have around 3 pages which we can click and go through. So before starting with the writing code, I would like to make you aware with some SQL queries, which is actually responsible for pagination. I'm sure you must be familiar with the select query of MySQL, which goes like this: select all from users, right? So this means select each and every field and each and every rows of the table that we are mentioning in the query. But what if you want to have listed only 4 out of all? So in this case, you have a keyword called limit. So if you only want 4 rows instead of all, you can just say limit 4. Okay, so let's try to run this query, and you will see that now it grabs 4 entries from this list and displays in our output. Let's see. Select all from users, limit 4. Go. You can see now it grabbed the first 4 entries and showed to us, right? Now let's create another scenario. Let us suppose you want to grab 4 entries from the table starting from row 3. Okay, so we came to know that limit 4 actually grabs the first 4 entries of the table. But sometimes there might be cases like we want to have the entries that starts from Alba or that starts of Andrea. So in that case, we have to mention, or we have to specify the offset. Offset, actually, by saying offset, it means the starting index or the starting place or the starting position of the query, where to start the query from, where to grab the data from. So that is offset. So if I paste select all from user limit 4, I can just follow it by saying offset, and my offset will be 3. Okay, so this query means actually I need 4 entries from users table, and my starting position would be 3. So let's try this. Go. Now we can see that it returned 4 entries out of 14, and this is because we have set the limit to be 4, but it started from 4. But why did it start from 4 when we have set the offset to be 3? And this is because in MySQL actually the offset starts from the number 0. So 0 actually means the first offset, and 1 to be second, 2 to be third, and 3 to be fourth entry. So this is why when we specify the offset to be 3, it started from 4. So this is simple. There is nothing complex in it. So limit is followed by the number, the desired numbers of entry that we want to show, and the offset refers to the number which denotes the starting position of the listed entry. There's one more way to write the same query, which is a little bit more easy and shorter. I would like to share that. Just let me copy this query first. SQL. Now let me paste the query. Now instead of saying limit 4 offset 3, we can just write the same query by the one keyword limit. Okay, if you want to use limit instead of limit and offset both, what we can do is we can separate the offset and we can separate the limit by comma. The first number that is to be written is the offset. Okay, so this needs to be understood. Okay, so my offset is 1 and my limit is 5. So limit follows the offset, so the first number is always the offset and the second number should be limit if you want to write it this way. So let's try this. You can see now my entry started from 2 and it returned me 5 entries because my offset is 1, which means second entry, and I got 5 data returned, which is due to 5. This means limit 5 and offset 1. So this is the way how we write the SQL query, and this is exactly what pagination does. Pagination manipulates and plays with limit and offset in order to display different data from the database. So that's what we are going to do today through our PHP code. Let me just quickly connect to the database. I hope you know the syntax, how to connect to the database and how to run queries, how to execute MySQL. So if you are not aware, let me just write it down for you. Let me create a variable called link and assign it the MySQL I connect. It has 4 parameters. The first one is my database host, which is a local host, my username, MySQL server's username, which is root, my password, which is MySQL. You might have different passwords. Some of you, if you are using WAMP or even XAMPP and other server, most of them have default password to be blank, but since I'm using AMPS and my default password for AMPS is MySQL, and my database name, which is PHP_Specials. PHP_Specials. Okay, let me save this. Let's say this inside www, and I've created a folder called PHP Specials, and I want to save it in there as pagination.php. paginati pagination.php. Okay, so first thing, we just connected to the MySQL server and the database. We'll just prepare a query, but instead of writing query directly, first of all I would like to specify my offset and my limit on the top of the page like this. So let's say my limit would be 5 each page and my offset would be 0. Okay, So now we'll be using this variable in our SQL query to write our query. So let's say our query is select all from users limit. So I would like to write it this way, 0, 5. So instead of writing numbers directly, I want to use the variables that we just created. So my first variable is offset, and my second variable is, my first number will be offset and my second number is limit. So I have to write it this way, limit, offset. So those who are not familiar of using using the variables inside double quote, you can even concatenate it this way. So concatenate with this, this and this. So select all from users, limit will be replaced by the first parameter should be offset and the second parameter should be limit. Okay, so select all from users 0, 5 because offset has 0 and limit has 5. Okay, now secondly, I need to execute this query. For that, let me create a variable called result and run the query. mysql underscore query, its first parameter should be this variable, which is link, $link, and its second parameter will be the query. Now after we've run the query, I would like to quickly check the number of rows. For that, I will use mysqli function, which is mysqli underscore num underscore rows. Okay, so if mysqli num rows of result is greater than 0, which means it has returned at least an entry, in that case I would like to use a while loop to grab each and every entry returned by this query. So for that, I'll do row equals to mysqli underscore fetch underscore, you can do row, you can do array, you can do result, you can do associative array. So I would like to use associative array instead of others, and the parameter to be passed is result. So this way I am looping through each and every result, and I want to display it in the table. So for that, I would like to create a quick HTML table. So to write HTML, I'll just instead of doing echo table, what I would like to do is I would like to close the PHP over here and start from here so that I can write HTML directly over here. So table, let me just give it some attributes like width equals to 100%, and let me also give a border equals to 1. You can make it much cleaner using CSS, but for now I just want to create a table. Similarly, after the loop I would like to end the table, and so for that I will close the PHP here and start it from here so that I can write plain HTML without using echo. So my table closes and my table starts over here. Now let us give a label, headings for this table. So tr th, let me show the first thing as ID, second heading to be name, and the third to be email, and the fourth to be gender. So these are the 4 fields that we have in the database, and I would like to show all of them in my table. So inside while loop, I would like to do the same. I want to close the PHP here and start it here so that I can write the HTML here. So my tr starts here for each row, and we have 4 ts, and respectively I should have 4 tds, right? So first for ID, second for name, email, and gender. In the first data, I will be displaying the ID of the row. So echo $row ID. So this is what you have to do if you use associative instead of object or instead of row. So if you were to use like object instead of assoc, you should have done this. Okay, so it's up to you. You can use whatever you are comfortable with. So let us just use object for now. So this is for ID, and this is for name, this is for email, and this is for gender. ID, name, email, and gender. Okay, let's try to run this now. Localhost PHP underscore specials slash pagination dot php is our file name. So you can see it gave me the first 5 entries of the database instead of returning all, because we used limit and offset. Now secondly, what we want to do is we want to get the total number of entries in the table and created pages accordingly. For example, suppose if we have 14 row, then we need to show 3 pages, I mean 3 numbers in the listing, like we have to show like page 1, page 2, page 3 in the bottom of the page, so that the people gets aware that there are 3 number of pages in this listing, and they can click on each page number to go through that, to browse through that page. Well, in that case we have to know 2 things. First of all, we need to know how many number of pages are there, and in order to know that, we need to know like what is the total number of entry in my database. And the second thing that I need to know is how many entries do I need to show on each page. So suppose we have 15 entries in our database, and we need to show 5 on each page, which means I will have 3 pages in total. So 5 times 3 is 15. So this means if I have 15 data in total and I need to show 5 on each page, which implies I need to have 3 pages. So page 1, page 2, and page 3. What if I have, the reason that I created only 14 entries is to make you clear with something. So what if I have 14 entries? So in that case, it was just 5 times 3 is 15, but 5 times 3 is not 14. So how do we relate this? So in this case, what we need to do is, if we divide 14 by 5, it will give us 2 point something, which means 2, and there is remainder of 4. So 14 modulus 5 is 4, right? Similarly, 14 divided by 5, if you just grab the integer, it is 2, and the modulus is 4. So what we need to do is, first of all, we need to get the dividend and the divided value, which is 2, and if there is a modulus, we need to add 1 to that 2, which gives us 3. And if there is no remainder, that is perfect. So 15 divided by 5 is 3 without any remainder. So if the remainder is 0, we don't need to do anything. We just get the result of the division. But if there is a remainder, we just need to add 1 to the result, which will give us 2 plus 1, 3. So this is how we get the total number of pages. So the main concern is, how do we get the total number of entries in the database? So for that, we have a function in mysql which goes like this. So select count. So what do you want to count? Anything like ID, name, gender, email. So how many IDs are there? So let's say IDs. Select ID, count of ID from users. If you say go, it will return us the number of count as 14. So it says there are 14 IDs in this table. So that is what we want. But the field name it is giving us is count ID, which is a bit complex to write in our MySQL. So what we need to do is we can give an alias to this count ID. And how to do that? I'll just edit over here. So select count ID as let's say total. Okay, so select count. I'm counting the IDs and assigning the value 14 to total. Now let's see, if I say go, it is giving us 14. Yeah, so which is a bit cleaner. So I want to use this query to get the total number of entries in the database. So I'll run the query just how I ran this. let me do it on the top. I say even here on top. So let's say I have q2 equals to this query. Okay, so I'm counting the number of IDs and assigning it to the total. Now let's say result2 is mysql underscore query. Its first parameter would be link, which is this variable, and its second parameter is its mysql query. So after executing the query, I would like to get the value which is let's say row$row2 equals to fetch. I would like to fetch, so mysql underscore fetch underscore object of $result2. So finally my total would be $row2, and we have set it as total, so it should be total. Let us try to print this to check to see if we are getting correct number of total. Let me end the statement, let me end the execution over here by calling a die function, and die function actually stops the execution to the number of line preceding it, and it will not execute these all lines. So my execution will stop over here, so it will display me the total number of rows that I just fetched. I would just want to check to see if the total number of rows I'm fetching is correct. So let me just refresh it, and I'm getting 14, which is perfect. The first thing that we wanted, we have got it, so we have got the total. And the second thing that we need to know is we need to know the limit of the page, which is 5. Perfect. We can just define it manually like this. So my limit is 5. I have total number of rows to be like total. Now let us calculate the page total number of pages. So this is total number of rows. After this, we need to know what is the total number of pages if we have limit to be 5. So what we need to do is pages equals to, I will divide the total by 5. Okay, so I will divide the total by 5 firstly, and assign it to and parse it to integer. I don't need decimals, so in that case I will just parse it this way. So this means divide total by 5 and only grab the integer and assign to pages. So let's see if I'm getting it right. Right now 14 divided 5, it should give me 2 because it's not 3, it's 2 point something, and I'm only grabbing the integer, which means our pages should be 2. Let's see. I would like to end the statement over here, so die, so it should give me 2, which is perfect. Now third thing, I need to check if it had any remainder. So I would like to check that if while dividing total by 5, if it had any remainder, I would just need to add it by 1, add the total number of pages by 1, because 14 entries actually requires 3 pages, but it's only showing 2. Why? Because while dividing 14 by 5, it is giving me some remainder. So I need to check if the remainder is there. If the remainder is greater than 0, in that case I need to add 1 to pages. So what will I do here is I will check to see if total modulus 5 is not equals to 0. If the total, not 5, let's make it dynamic by doing limit. So if I divide the total by limit and my remainder is not 0, which means it is not exactly being divided by the limit. So in that case I need to add in that case I need to add 1 to pages. So pages plus plus, or let's just say pages equals to $pages plus 1. So this is all that we need for now. We know the total number of entries now, which we don't need in future. We know the limit, the number of rows to be shown in each page. We know the total number of pages now, which is here, and this is the offset. Okay, now what we need to do is we need to create anchors in the bottom of the on the bottom of the table, and as per the total number of pages we need to create the total number of anchors. So if there are 3 pages, we need to have 3 anchors over here, and if there are 4 pages, we need to have 4 anchors over here. So let us just run a loop that says like for $I equals to 0, $I is less than $pages, $I plus plus. So if the pages is 3, I need to run the loop 0 to 2 to print 3 anchors. So that's what I'm doing. I'm starting the loop from 0 and looping through each number of pages and trying to display the anchors. So in order to display the anchor, I would like to close the PHP here and start the PHP here again. This is the way I really prefer, because I don't want to mess with echo and concatenation of string, and I don't want to mix HTML and PHP, which is really untidy. So what I generally do is I close the PHP and I write the plain HTML within it. So anchor href equals to, let's give it hash for now, and I want to display the number of the page. So if it is 0, I want to display 1, if it is 1, I want to display the 2, and if it is 2, I want to display 3. So what I will do is I will echo $I plus 1. Let's just check if we got the numbers correctly, and let us also give an extra space after the anchor so that there are spaces after each anchors. So we can see 1, 2 and 3 is now being displayed in the page. So our first mission is completed. We have displayed the total number of pages and anchors with respect to that total number of pages. So we have 5 entries, and for each entry we have a page number denoted. So first page should have 1 to 5, second page should have 6 to 10, and third page, as per our database, should have 11 to 14. Now let's check it. Now make it workable, we need to somehow pass the offset and limit through this through this anchor. You don't need to worry much about it. What we can do is we can just pass that the current value of I we are in the loop. So for example, for the first loop, I just like to pass. I would like to loop through the same page, like pagination dot php. I want the anchor to go to the same page, but with the index. What I want to do is I want to say like I equals to, or start equals to like start equals to $I. I want to concatenate, or instead of PHP echo $I. So my start is 0 for the first loop, and or let's just say offset equals to I 0 for the first loop, and my limit equals to 5, which is $limit. I'm just avoiding writing 5 directly. This is because we want to make the system a little bit dynamic, so that in case I want to change the limit to be 10, then I don't have to write on each and every place. We can just use the variable to denote it. So my limit is $limit, which is PHP echo $limit. So this way I am passing limit and offset through the URL in pagination. Let us just try. It will not work right away, but we have just created some basic thing. So in a 1, we are sending the page to localhost PHP Specials pagination.php, the same page, but with limit offset equals to 0 and limit equals to 5. This is exactly what we want. But for the second page, it is saying offset equals to 1, which is not what we needed. For the second case, the offset should have been 5, because we need to start from the 6th entry. So the offset should have been 5. Similarly, for the third page, the offset should have been 11, because we had to start from the 11th entry. So for 0, it should be 0. For 1, it should be 5. And for 11th, it should be 10. So it has a simple rule. We can just multiply the offset by the limit. So for the first loop, the offset should be 0, which means if I multiply limit, that is 5, by I, So I times 5, I mean 5 times 0 is 0. So what I can do here is $offset equals to $limit times $I. So if I do this for the first loop, it becomes 5 times 0, which is 0. So our offsets will be 0. In the second loop, it will be 5 times 1 equals to 5. So for the second loop, my offset will be 5. And for the third loop, it will be 5 times 2 equals to 10. So my offset will be 10. And that is what exactly that I want. Now let's see if I'm getting the offset and limit correctly. So for my first loop, the offset is 0 and my limit is 5. For the second loop, my offset is 1, which is not correct. So offset equals to I. Now instead of saying I, what I can do is I can do offset, save. Now let us refresh. For my first loop, my offset is 0, which is perfect. Offset equals 0, limit equals to 5. For my second loop, my offset is 5 and my limit is 5. That is also perfect. And my third loop, my offset is 10 and my limit is 5. And this is exactly what we wanted. So now we are able to send the offset and limit through the URL on the same page, so that we can manipulate the page data. So now what we need to do next is we need to grab the limit and offset. Okay, now you can see on the top what we are doing is we are setting the limit manually this way and we are setting the offset manually this way. Let me just put them together. Now what we'll be doing is we'll be checking if we are getting these data from the URL. We are getting the offset and the limit. So what we need to do is, if not is set $_get limit, in that case we need to set the limit to 5. Else we want to set the limit to be what we are getting from the URL. So $limit equals to $_get limit, right? So we are getting a limit from the URL, but while first time we are browsing the pagination, this value is not set. So in that case we want to set the limit to be 5 by default, but if we are getting the limit from the URL, we are setting the limit to be the value that we are getting from the URL. Same thing for the offset. So if we are not getting the offset, if not is set $_get offset, we want to set the offset to be 0, but if we are getting the offset from the URL, then we want to set the offset to be what we are getting from the URL. So in this way we are now able to set the offset dynamically from the value that we are getting from the URL. Now let's see. It is giving some 0 and some problem. On-caught division by 0 error, modulo by 0. Okay, in line number 10, let's check. It's saying that I'm trying to divide something by 0 in line number 10. It is because we need to use limit here and I have moved the limit down. That is why it is giving me some error. So let me just copy this block and paste it over here, so that copy these both blocks and paste it over here, so that the limit can be used over here. Okay, now it should work fine. So in my first page my limit is 0 and my offset is 5, so I'm getting 1 to 5. In my second page my limit is 5, so 6 to 10. My third page 11 to 14. So this is exactly what we wanted. So we can browse to any page to check the data if they are all good. So in our, we can see the ID are coming from 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 6 to 10 and 11 to 14, and this is what we want. I hope you understood what I tried to explain, and I hope you liked the video. And if you really liked it, please share it, subscribe to it. I really appreciate that. And I'll see you tomorrow with another new video with another new topic. Till then, stay tuned. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you.